Good morning, Comrade. You're listening to WHIV-LP New Orleans 102.3. This is your weekly Good Morning, Comrade. Things sound a little bit different because I'm actually recording at the studio live and in person with a very special guest. Ladies and gentlemen and everyone else between and beyond, welcome to the program. She is a candidate for District 2 Orleans Parish School Board. Her name is Gabriela Biro. Gabriela, how are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me on again. It's really exciting to be in the studio.
Yeah, totally. First off, it's always great to have somebody who is actually listens to the program, who talks about it's really sick that you and Cody are fans.
Yeah, and I do have to say, a lot of my listening is secondhand with my husband, playing video games and just listening to Good Morning Comrade or other leftist podcasts. So that's my introduction.
What games are y'all playing?
Well, we have a child, so the last game that I played was Tears of the Kingdom while he's still napped. My husband, he has a gaming PC and the whole setup. Nice.
Yeah. I've been playing a lot of Street Fighter 6.
Okay,
yeah, fighting games and stuff.
He's playing Doom again because he said now he has the better graphics.
Doom Eternal?
He's going to do it again, yes.
Classic. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you less about video games, but more about your campaign for school board in District 2.
Yeah.
We were actually together on election night. We had a nice little conversation. We were hopeful that you would at least make the runoff in this race, and our hopes came to fruition. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, and then we can talk maybe a little bit about the campaign and volunteering and things like that?
Yeah, so I was really hopeful, the night of when I was speaking to you. I felt like I kind of had a good chance. Just when I was speaking to people, door knocking, a lot of people were saying, I already voted for you, or I'm interested in voting for you.
Love that.
So I felt hopeful, optimistic, and then when it happened, I didn't check my phone that night. I went to bed unbothered.
Oh,
I didn't look into anything.
I would not be able to do that. I would just be I would tell myself I would do something like that, and then every Tuesday, I would need my phone to be locked away in a safe or something.
And so at 6 a.m, I thought my son had gotten out of his room, but it was my husband in the kitchen, and he was like, "Congratulations, baby!" And I was like, "What?" And then he was like, "You made the runoff," and they're against Eric Jones, and I was like, "What?" Because I thought the Entergy big money funded candidate was going to be the one I would be against in the runoff.
Yeah,
but he got smoked. He got the least between us.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So much like the Kamala Harris campaign, who raised $1 billion and didn't win.
Yeah. It came
Seems like
down.
money matters less.
He had about $100,000, and I had $2,500.
That's insane. That is an insane amount of money for a school board election.
That's one thing that I was saying. I was like, what if we had put that money towards children?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's actually 100% great line, because that is, you can definitely see that school districts are always cutting. I mean, we were talking about this right before we went on the air. You brought this to my attention, that there's a budget shortfall taking place in Orleans Parish, and you have candidates for office. We can talk about that in a moment, but we have candidates for office who are just flush with money. They just have it all, and it's just it definitely is a huge disconnect. Yeah, and people see that.
Yeah, and I was really appreciative that people saw through that. Right before the election, we did our last canvassing, and some articles had been published that told about the campaign finance, and so people were putting two and two together. I've been getting all these mailers, I've been getting all these robotechs. This has to cost something. And now that I've been on this side, I know one of those mailers is about $2 each. Yeah. They were sending several of those a week. Yes. So I know that I received at least $20 or $30 worth of stuff to myself. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a that's so crazy, and there is, considering I was when I was on the executive committee, and I was actually on the central committee for the Democratic Party for a couple of years. There is a very strong the consultant people will be the very first thing they'll do is they'll come to you and be like, this is how you win a campaign. You need X number of dollars to send this kind of mailer and all of those other things.
Exactly.
And
nobody knew what to do with me, because I was I have $250. What can I do with this? And I just started hand painting signs. I did my own graphic design. I made my own website.
Nice.
I have handled all my emails, correspondence.
The DIY campaign, I love it.
I'm a crafty mom, so I was like, I can make it work.
Well, you definitely made it to the runoff, and honestly, in that kind of a situation, it is anybody's game. I did want to ask you about about this DIY aspect of it. I mean, you said you did some of the graphic design or all the graphic design by yourself. You created your own website. You also have to organize your own canvassing and building an operation, and that's super important to have. I mean, if you again, as evidenced by the Harris campaign, you can have an amazing canvassing operation if you don't have a good message, but apparently you were able to construct that at least some kind of a canvassing operation with your message. So
I had really heavy lifting from UTNO, the Teachers Union of New Orleans.
I love the good guys.
It was really amazing. So it was my second forum that I went to. It was hosted by UTNO and Step Up, and I've since been endorsed by both of them. And after receiving their endorsement, things completely changed. Like I was completely doing everything on my own, really struggling, and then they put all of their effort behind me. They were handling my canvassing, coordination, all of that. And so my message is strong, it resonates with people, but I needed that push, and they really...
Can't do it by yourself.
Yeah, they really came through for me, and then now a lot of DSA members are really stepping up.
Yeah.
And Step Up also, they've been doing separate, like, some of these...
Their name is Step Up, of course they're stepping up.
necessarily, but, like, they've been doing a lot for me as well. So I have a lot of really great people in my corner now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, and again, like, if you listen to the show, I mean, I'm a former teacher myself. If anybody is going to, like, lay it out on the line, put it all on the field for the kids, it's the teachers. So, you're on the side of the good guys when you have the teachers in your corner.
Yeah, and I work as a hairstylist. If I guess your listeners might not know that about me, and that was kind of the first thing that got me concerned about the school system. Just having people in my chair, and we'd be chatting and just like, how's your life going? And they would be like, not good. Like, I'm dealing with this, and this. And I'd be like, that is crazy. Like, how is that happening in our school system? How is nobody doing anything about this? And so for like years, I was like, won't somebody think of the children? And then I was like, I guess I'm going to have to think of the children during qualifying.
I think people are thinking of the children just plenty, but people aren't doing enough for the children is the problem. You know what I mean? And you're definitely out there doing for the children.
And that's kind of something that I've done, like, as a parent and just somebody in the community. One thing I found was good for my anxiety was like, okay, you're anxious about this, like, do what you can. So even if it's not, like, if I was making a big meal, make a little bit extra, put it in, like, community fridges, like, that's something I can do.
Do things to help people.
And it was really to have a feeling of control, because you don't have a lot of sense of control in this world.
No.
You feel that, the powers that be have the control, and you're just experiencing life and you're just existing. And so for my own mental health, I started doing kind of mutual aid things to be like, okay, I can do this. And then as I've felt more comfortable, it's gotten bigger. And then when qualification period happened, I was like, I could do that. Like, I can't, Devin Davis from the DSA, like, his campaign really inspired me, because I was like, he's running for Congress? Like, I was
which
like,
is like, that's like swinging for the fences right there.
But I was like, if he can do that, I can do a school board. Like, that's attainable. I'm not biting off too much. So I was like, okay, I'm going to step it up a little bit. But I really encourage everyone, like, if you're feeling anxious about what's going on in the world, like, do what you can with what you have. Like, everyone has their skill set, everyone can make a difference, and it feels really good.
Yeah, totally. And we can definitely make a difference. And even if it isn't, running for school board yourself, find someone who is in sort of your position, who's doing something like you. Volunteer. You can canvass. You can make phone calls. You can, if anything else, you can give money to folks, just to sort of make sure that when these kind of campaigns are out there, we need to do everything that we can if we want to have people who are actually working people in the world, like, assuming these positions of power where they can actually make, like, real change outside. Obviously, like, doing the mutual aid does benefit people, but, like, when we're talking about, like, large scale, like, political change, we need to be able to assume some of these positions of power.
What really changed for me was this past legislative session, I went to Baton Rouge, and I actually went inside the Capitol to give my dissent. And
on what specifically?
It was I I'm trying to remember the bill and everything, but it was the Don't Say Gay bill. Like those things, because I have a lot of friends who are queer teachers.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're criminalizing my identity right now.
Right. You're criminalizing their identity. You're basically making them erase a certain part of themselves and making it so that they can't be themselves in front of their students. And also, if their students come out to them, to teachers, which is very common.
Yes.
That you're, what are you supposed to do? You're breaking the law all of a sudden? Like, I'm sorry, but like, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know.
Yeah,
but
know,
that
like,
kind of stuff really makes me angry.
Yeah, and then, I mean, just I'm gonna call a spade, like just what I do. That's a step in fascism. You know, that's the othering to criminalize and to marginalize so that they feel afraid for the existence. Like, that's a step towards fascism.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I mean, we're definitely taking some steps towards that right now.
And I want to be explicit with that. Like, I don't want to normalize what's happening to us. Like, we need to fight back, and we cannot normalize this.
Yeah, totally. And that was what you said when you went to the committee meeting in Baton Rouge.
Yeah. So I just, you know, like, they have dissent cards. Like, I didn't say it, but everyone looked at me. Like, it was crazy. I was like, do I have a second head? Because they had never seen somebody like me in there. Like,
really?
Somebody with pink. I had like pink hair at the time. I was the youngest person that in there. Everyone was wearing suits. There were some like uptown little boys who were having some sort of internship, and I was in the elevator, and they said nasty things about me while I was in the elevator. And just it was really. People were not kind to me there, and I was like, I need to be here because this is why I need to be here, because they are not used to seeing somebody like this in the room. They are keeping that gate closed. And you know, I had friends who were outside protesting actually for a separate bill, and
there was a lot of bad bills.
There's a lot of bad stuff going on. And I didn't know that they were there. When you're in that building, anything could be happening around you. You don't know because you're in your little sequestered power kingdom.
It's a bubble.
Yeah.
It's an absolute bubble.
So, like, my friends drove an hour out there, screamed their guts out, like, you know, and they don't care. Those people don't care.
The only times you can ever get their attention is when they're coming in or coming out, and they have their own special even entrances where they don't have to, like, deal with the public. It's the people that are outside of those buildings need to be inside of those buildings effing stuff up, because, like, that is the things that the Louisiana legislature did just in the last term, the things that the Louisiana legislature did when there was a Democrat as governor were horrific. So, I mean, there definitely does need to be more of a presence. Like I'm not against the protest side of this thing, but there also needs to be the presence of people who are in those spaces, who are saying those things, you know, who are at least like, look, I've provided testimony at the Capitol as well. Like, it is a very sort of like intentionally, like, they have all the signs of like, you know, glamour that are up all there to try and all the pomp, all the BS, and like the whole point of that is to like make people who like normal people feel like they don't belong there. That stuff affects you. You need to be in there, and you need to be messing that stuff up, because they are going to do. If you even like make a little bit of a like, like, you can definitely like use that to kind of push things forward.
Yeah. So I really feel like normal everyday people need to have a seat at the table, because they are making our decisions for us, and they don't care about us.
Yeah, totally. They do not. Yeah. I mean, again, when I was in, I'm just gonna, you know, just for a moment, when I went up there, I was actually making the case for a safe return to school. It was myself, it was other teachers. This was during COVID, and like, I don't know if you had seen the sort of like return to school guidelines. They were just like, well, I'm a
hairstylist, so they were like, I demand a haircut.
Oh my god, I remember. Oh my god, you had the people in their truck is like going to the salon. Is like, my wife needs her nails done or whatever. It's like, okay, bro, like that was but the return to school thing was like, the guidelines were very like, whatever. If
everyone was just like, I want my services. I want my things back up and running. I don't care about the people who are providing them.
We want things to go back in. Well, and even, and I made this case as well, like, schools are not like isolated from the rest of the world. If you have hundreds of children in a school building with teachers, that is going to not just spread amongst themselves. That's going to spread to every single person that has a child that works in a school or whatever. I mean, that's a every day in school is a super spreader event, essentially.
And in the American system,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have paid time off as parents. Like I'm a parent, so if
Mm-hmm.
my kid was sick, some parents are making that calculation, like, do I take the day off or do I send my sick
Yep.
kid to school?
Yep. And also, I mean, again, people don't have health care either.
Yeah.
I don't have health care right now, so
Yeah.
it's just like one of those. I'm just re-litigating something that happened to you. But anyway, me and a couple other teachers made our case, and they were just like, okay, we vote to pass this thing out of committee, and we don't care.
Yeah. We'll say it with a smile on our face, too.
Oh yeah, we did it very politely, and they followed all of the rules. So if you were worried about that,
Yeah.
then like don't rest. Rest easy. They followed all the procedures.
That is the thing about the democratic establishments. Like, you're more offended by
Oh, my
indecency
Lord.
than actual cruelty.
My favorite thing. Sorry to like jump subjects really quickly, but the Democrats after the election, like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, were like coming out, and they were like, you know what we're gonna do as a response to January 6th when we lose? We're going to have the most orderly, the most peaceful transition of power you ever did see. It's just like, oh, okay. You're really showing them. You really, we're going to roll over like a dog.
I don't even. As I said before we got in the air, part of why I ran for this campaign is that I'm kind of a control freak.
Yeah.
And for my own mental health, I was like, I don't want to have to worry about what's going on in the presidential
Yeah.
election. I'm going to do this election so that I'm worried about myself.
Yeah. So, in order to sort of circle back to that,
Yeah.
you mentioned your opponent. Now, I'm not necessarily trying to get you to say
Yeah.
anything like whatever. Could you just at least provide a little bit of background on what he sort of brings to the table and why you're not on the same page as him?
Yeah. So when I saw that he and the other person were planning on running, the things that I was not happy with Mr. Tucker was his corporate money that he was receiving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a great person, and I've told him, like, I would invite him for my crawfish boil or beer, whatever. Like, he's actually really nice, and that was
Sure.
I was like, I really like him, but
It's not personal.
Yeah. And Mr. Eric Jones, my issue with him is that he has had issues. He's been a career educator, but he
Okay.
was let go from a charter school board for some level of impropriety. Like, there was a lot of shenanigans going on. There was a signed letter from all of the teachers that the school needed to be shut down because it was
Oh
not.
gosh, what school is this? Do you
It
know?
was Cog Hill
Oh,
Academy,
no.
Mary
Oh,
Cog Hill. Yeah.
That was one of the few union schools that were unfortunately shut down. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I heard about what happened with that, I was like, well, he already served on a charter school board and did that.
Didn't do so well. Yeah.
That was amazing. And there's other things, like my competitor Chan put out an ad about him where it has cited sources, and I won't bring them all up, but
Sure.
he has a lot of baggage.
Sure.
He has a lot of baggage. And
that might have inhibited his ability to govern, even if he has good intentions, things like that.
yeah. So a lot of the things our policy ideas are similar. Like, we both believe in, like, direct run schools for our community. We say a lot of the similar things. But I think the difference between me is that I am a parent right now. Like, I have a young child. I know what's happening with families like mine.
You have stake in the game.
And things are not the way they were when I was growing up. Our systems are very broken, and I was just realizing that because when as a person without children, sometimes you don't engage in these things, and you're like, everything's fine. This is school. I went to school.
Yeah.
And then when you have your own child, you're like, oh my God, is this what it is?
Yeah. I can definitely
Yeah.
confirm that as a former teacher.
Yeah.
Things are wild.
Yeah, and when I've been out canvassing, like, if people don't have a child in the school system and I tell them about things that are going on, sometimes they don't believe me. They think that it's like hyperbole. And I'm like, no, these are stories that people have given me about their lived experience in our school system. Like, this is what's going on. Like, children with IEPs, like disabilities, being locked in a room because there's no special ed teacher.
Oh my
Things like
gosh.
that. Like, somebody was telling me that their child wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom and they got a bladder infection and the teacher wouldn't give them their medication, and it progressed. Like, really unconscionable things are happening. And people are letting it happen.
Have you put? I mean, maybe you have, but have you really put a lot of thought into, because this is something that was definitely on the radar of education reform people, not the ones that. So education reform is
Yeah.
a very loaded term, but the back probably not even a decade ago, people would call what happened in New Orleans after the storm, which was essentially the complete transformation of the public school system in New Orleans from a public school system to an entirely charter school system, as an experiment. Have you put any thought or taken any positions on this sort of like the state of, charter school versus public school versus what's happening right now? I know we have the Leah Chase School that just opened up recently. How do you feel sort of along those lines?
I would like to have more direct run schools. I don't feel like the all charter system serves us at all because it doesn't give you enough options. There are children who are stuck with their charter school. They're failing charter school essentially, and they cannot go to another option. It was sold as a choice.
It was sold as choice, and it was very much not the truth.
And what I'm realizing is that if you have the means to navigate the system, to kind of gamify it, like you can get good outcomes. But if you don't have those means, you are going to be stuck with what there is, and what there is not great a lot of times.
And honestly, like the charter system as well has brought up issues with transportation, because the charter schools that you would qualify through the One App would not necessarily be in your neighborhood, so you would have to take a bus all the way across the school, or your parents would have to provide transportation. It was a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, and those bus rides can be like I've talked to students who have hour-long bus rides, and just this past year, they finally got AC on all of them. Like, there was no AC.
Yeah, well, that's finally, like that's decades.
And when we've been having, extreme temperatures too,
it is, and that's one of the sort of like, the knock-on effects of, I guess, climate change that people don't always think about. We did bring up, I guess, the budget shortfall that is taking place within the school system right now, and then also some of the teachers have been responding to that. Can you just talk, I guess, maybe just give some background about the shortfall, and then we can sort of talk about
so we found out about the shortfall about a month ago, I believe. There was reporting on it, and it was an accounting error. So they...
Oopsie-doopsie.
Yeah, and off the top of my head, I can't remember how much the accounting error was, but I believe it's in hundreds of thousands or million, and so because of that, the individual schools are starting to rethink their budgets, because they're like, oh, we have all of these resources for the new school year. We're going to do great things. And like, okay, scratch that. We're not going to do any of these extra services. And in some schools, like the Rooted School, they made the choice to lay off 4 teachers.
What?
This was like the day after everything had come out. So before, sitting down and talking with the teachers who had been bargaining, they have
a contract, don't they?
Yeah,
they can do that? I guess they can.
I mean, well, that's why we're out there. So I was out there today with UTNO members, and we were doing a picket line.
Showing some solidarity with these teachers that got laid off all of a sudden in, November.
And one of them, she is the head custodian, and she was on workers' comp, and they just let her go. They laid her off while she was on workers' comp, and she broke her ankle slipping in the lobby. She was cleaning and slipped
at work,
and broke her. Yeah, and they laid her off while she was on workers' comp.
That is, I mean, I can't really use the words that I want to use to describe that on the radio.
Let's bite our tongues, Jeff. Let's bite our tongues right now.
I mean, somebody who got injured on the job gets fired. I mean, that's old school bossing right there.
And this budget shortfall, so that it's going to be taken out of salaries. That's what they are, planning on doing. And
oh my God,
to me, to come back to video games, like when Nintendo didn't do well, their CEO took a salary cut.
Yeah,
like that's what people in power need to take responsibility for these errors. We cannot push it down to the lowest ranks and rungs and say like, okay, you deal with this.
Yeah,
people need to take accountability. Like. People are using the accounting error to say, like, this is why we can't have direct run schools, because the school system can't handle this. And,
Wait. Was it the school system that did this, or was it the...
It was an accountant, a hired accountant, and by the school system and everything. But I don't think it would be different in a charter versus, it was an error.
Rooted is a charter school.
Yeah. But it was like a system-wide thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the reason why these charters can have they have tons of accountants, they have tons of people because they pay all these people, and the public school system.
It's an entire economy.
Yeah, the public school system doesn't have the same resources, so they're trying to frame it as like, oh, they can't handle this, they're not up to the task.
Yeah.
But we sent people to the moon with a graphing calculator.
Yeah.
Like, we can fix our school system.
Yeah. It's not that complicated. I mean, again, my take on the whole thing is that it is broken intentionally.
Yes,
like,
yeah.
it was when Hurricane Katrina came along, the capital interest saw a piggy bank and they smashed it and they took all the money out of it. I mean, that's just what it was.
And I think that's what we see with that any crisis, like 9/11, they're like, oh, we got to do this and this. Like the financial collapse. Like, we got to do this, we got to do this, like, it's what we got to do. Sorry, guys. Like, you got to take your shoes off now.
Yeah, the disaster capitalism. If you read your Naomi Klein, you know all about it, I guess.
Yeah, and New Orleans is very well known for that. And
but we're so resilient, though.
Because you gotta be.
Yeah, I love the branding of. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm getting on my little high horse again.
But I do have to say, like, I'm not from here, and that's something that people hold against me sometimes with this campaign. But I would rather be in the place that's struggling and see it and fight with it, rather than be in my little castle seeing what's happening.
Also, it's not like you don't live here. Like, that's ridiculous. I mean, that is very sort of like nativist. I mean, there are like concerns that people and anxieties that people have about sort of gentrification and things like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean you should be applying that to individuals.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that is, again, like we were talking about before we went on air about climate change, the idea of the carbon footprint or the, is your soul purified enough for whatever. And it's just like, sorry, that's just not how people are and how the world works.
Yeah.
It's just people are people and just deal with it then.
And it's kind of sad because I'm not really from anywhere. Like, my parents had me, and then they were living in like a basement. They're like, we can't live here legally with an infant, so we got to move. And I moved a lot around as a child, so I can't really claim any place. Like, I lived in Seattle for middle school and high school, and I went to cosmetology school. But like, I don't really even like it, so I don't have like a home.
You're a citizen of the world, is what you are.
And I would love to die in New Orleans if climate change and the school system doesn't push me away.
Yeah, that's just another like weird gate that people just like to keep on, like, honest people like you, that like, look at this person coming in like a carpetbagger or whatever, like coming in here running for our school board seats. It's like, come on, like if that was what you were like gonna do, like what is your I don't know.
Yeah, I guess a cynical person could think that I'm like the bizarre world Moms for Liberty or something.
Yeah. yeah. Except they have money and you don't, which is I guess that's part of the bizarro part of it all. You mentioned, let's just pause for station ID really quickly. This is WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade. Jeff and Gabriela Biro here in the studio. Gabriela is in the runoff in her race for District 2 of the Orleans Parish School Board. We are talking about schools in New Orleans. We're talking about education, and we're just kind of talking about the city. You mentioned to me prior to going on air that one of your also concerns, you mentioned having a young child, the future of the world possibly existing and the habitability of humans on that world. Climate change is a major concern for you. And one of the things that I sort of think about, and we can sort of, this might be a part of your campaign already, but like, what is the role of a school board member? How can you positively affect climate change going forward? Obviously, there's the education component where you can sort of, encourage schools to teach that. But is there something I'm missing? Maybe like recycling in schools or something like that?
Well, my thought process and my kind of ethos when I think about things. So, are you familiar with Rafi, the singer Rafi?
I love Rafi. I love Banana Phone.
Yeah. Okay. So, when I had my son, we were playing a lot of Rafi, and I was like, I'm gonna look at his Wikipedia page, see what he's up to, and I found out
he's on Twitter. He's on Twitter. He's actually pretty funny.
Well, I was gonna say he has a foundation. He's a leftist. Like, I was like, what, Rafi? Okay.
Yeah, we love Rafi.
Yeah, we stan Rafi in my household.
I should get a Banana Phone.
Yeah, call Jeff on the Banana Phone. But so I looked at his Wikipedia page, and I was like, I was looking about his discography and everything, and then it went down to like philosophy, world vision, social. I was like, what? Okay,
yeah,
Rafi.
No, he's dope.
And
he's super cool.
So I found out about his foundation, the Rafi Foundation, and they have this system of thinking, and it's called child honoring, and that I took on that philosophy when I had my son. And what you do, it's basically how you can create positive change for children. If you look at any issue, you say, how can we fix this for children first? And if we fix it for children, we're fixing it for everyone. It's like a curb cutting measure. Like the ADA, like we created sidewalks that can help people in a wheelchair, but it also helps me with a baby carriage. It also helps somebody who just hurt themselves and has a limp. It reverberates.
It has knock-on benefits that aren't even necessarily intended, that are good.
So when we do things in a child-honoring way,
accessibility generally is good, I guess.
So when we do things in a child-honoring way, like say climate change, gun violence, or anything, if we're like, how can we solve this for children first? Worry about the adults later. And that's my mindset. That's my philosophy. So some of the things that I think we could do in schools, definitely recycling. Like New Orleans doesn't have enough recycling going on. We could even partner with people like Glass Half Full, teaching children about fostering the environment is very important. They're having things like community gardens. I think it's really important to teach children about nature, how to keep our soil healthy, clean water,
how to grow food,
how to sustain yourself. That teaches them about nutrition, health. Like those are some of the things.
And it's very practical, and its stuff is interesting. Kids would love that.
The thing that I've realized now that I'm a parent is like kids want to do things. If we give them the resources, they will do it. Like when I was out canvassing in like the Desire Project area, these young boys were playing at the playground. They're like, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, "Can I help you pick stuff up? Can I help you move things around?" And they were so helpful and so kind. And I was like, they just don't have anybody engaging with them. If somebody would take the time to talk to them, like they could do amazing things, but nobody's doing that right now. Like nobody's giving these kids options.
And obviously they can be moody or whatever in any given moment, but the sort of like general instinct of I wouldn't even say it's just children. I'd say most people, the problem is it becomes obscured by the sort of like individualization and atomization that exists within our society, which adults pick up on way more than children. But like the general instinct of people is to be kind and supportive and helpful and that kind of stuff. And
I'm going to get fully woo-woo with my whole life philosophy and everything. Woo-woo. I practice something called universal positive regard, which is where you assume that everyone is good and kind. And
assume good faith,
especially up to the age of 18, like no matter what somebody does, even if it's incredibly toxic, I'm like, you are a child, and the reason why you're doing toxic things is because you grew up in that environment. You don't know any better.
Creating more harm, that kind of stuff.
And so just viewing people in a positive way does so much to change their own mindset. Like I was told that I was a bad thing as a child, and it shaped my worldview, and it destroyed me.
You start to believe it.
Yeah,
honestly.
Even doing this now, I have a lot of self-doubt and like an inner saboteur. Like when I go up to public speak, it's like, you suck. You will never be able to do this. You're nothing. You came from nothing.
Well, you're not alone in that. And like many, like almost just about everybody seems to feel that way. And that is that is a result of the sort of like, I don't know, the brutality, at least, mentally and emotionally and socially that we have in the society of just sort of like always making someone feel that they're inadequate in some way. I mean, that translates all the way up to you telling me that Elon Musk does not feel inadequate about everything in the world? The richest guy in the world feels inadequate about everything on Earth because
that's why he's doing all this.
That's why he's doing all these dumb stuff and being such a like horrible person.
And if you never grew out of that hurt child, you will continue being that person. You'll continue to hurt people. And so I just don't want.
I'll get woo-woo with you on this stuff. Let's go.
I don't want other children to experience what I experienced. Like I had a really difficult childhood. It took me years of therapy to get to a place in my life where I feel comfortable with myself. And what I feel is like, like Plato's allegory of the cave. Like I have seen what's outside the cave. People are shackled up in that cave, and I need to break their chains.
Because they don't even know that they're in the cave. They see those shadows on the wall, and that whole deal. To get a little bit more direct and practical in terms of like ways to have that stuff, kind of stuff communicated. I mean, a little more nuts and bolts of it.
One restorative justice practices are an easy way to do that, rather than going straight to suspension, things like that. Being like, why did you do? One thing when I was growing up, I wasn't allowed to be my whole self. If I showed up and I did something that was like, why did you do that? If I tried to justify myself, they would be like, don't do that, you know.
No. You're supposed to doubt yourself. You're supposed to.
You know,
supposed to be insecure.
But a lot of kids, when they're doing these, like it makes sense. Like if you look through their child logic, you're like, okay, I see why you're doing this. And if we just had compassion for children, I think that they would have a lot better outcomes.
Yeah, and redirect.
Yeah.
And in terms of that, in terms of like, and it's not just like a replacement, obviously, like for.
No, it's not. And I think like with one thing that's really important with restorative justice is like somebody taking accountability, because in our society we have so many times where people can shirk what happened. But it's really a big growing opportunity to be like, I did something wrong.
Yeah.
How can I make this right?
Correct. Yeah, that's totally right. In terms of like further sort of like education of the whole child, or at least sort of like taking care of the whole child as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm almost certain, I'm not exactly sure the numbers on this, but like social workers in schools, I remember when I was teaching, were always very, very like, it was like 300 or 400 students to one social worker.
Yeah.
It's like
we
hundreds and
need much
hundreds
better,
of
yeah.
students to one nurse. When it comes to sort of like those actual like ratios and policies, I remember back in 2019 when the Chicago teachers went on strike. One of the things that they went on strike for was their nurses and social workers, because they were so overburdened and, you know, having to appear at several schools. When it comes to those kinds of things, I can sort of predict where you might be with that. But when it comes to sort of like moving in the direction and also convincing other members of the school board to sort of like go along with that, so what are your sort of thoughts and positions?
The thing that I look to is wraparound services because of the ease of, you know, attaining that. Thrive is a program that has been piloted by the Children's Hospital, and that's kind of a pilot project for that, and that's something I look to, is having wraparound services so that we can just essentially like a really good school nurse, like a mental health school nurse. Like, you need somebody, we have somebody, because that is something that we desperately need. So many children in New Orleans are deeply traumatized, and it reverberates through their whole life. And we need to have somebody intervene.
Yeah.
The school system is when people see the cracks,
Yeah.
and there needs to be intervention then, not when they get in trouble with the law, not when they're hurting themselves, not, you know, it needs to stop. We need to intervene before it gets that far.
Before we get to the breaking
Yeah.
points, before it causes more problems. Yeah, 100%. You mentioned Thrive. That's a program that's put out by the Children's Hospital. Can you describe it a little bit?
I'm not super familiar. You know, I just learned about it when I started campaigning with this, but it's like a pilot program to have those integrated services. So like parents don't have to be like, my kid needs to go to the doctor or see a therapist. Like, you don't have to do the research for that. You don't have to make the calls. You don't have to be referred. Like, it's part of the school.
Just
system.
making it easier for children to find medical
because,
services.
You know, like if say you're like, okay, your kid needs to go to the specialist or something. The list of things I have to do, okay, I have to go find them, see if they work with my insurance, or if they don't, what's the cost, what's their availability, can I do it with my work schedule? Like, there are so many barriers.
Do you know, and you said you didn't know everything about this program, but that's okay. Do you know if they provide mental health services as well?
I believe so, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Like, mental health services is one of the things that, like, I taught special ed for 8 years, and one of the things that's always sort of, you know, deeply like neglected is the need of the psychological and social needs of children. They would see social workers every now and then, but they're not psychologists. They're not therapists. They're social workers, you know?
I would argue that this is more important than some other, you know, traditional aspects of school. Like, it's more important that somebody can function in society than they can do like trigonometry, personally, to me, you know? Like,
I mean, you can't get to the trigonometry unless you're able to function in society.
Can you regulate your emotions?
Yeah.
Then you can learn some math.
Yeah. and again, this is one of the things, and this is, you know, part of how the sort of school system has changed over the years. You would see it even sort of encroaching on the younger grades, on pre-K and things like that, like testing for like kindergartners and pre-kindergartners, I think it was, I can't remember which of these years, but I think it was the second part of pre-K, I believe, they started taking away nap time, and it's just like,
Are you? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, and it's just like it might have been kindergarten, it might be pre-K, but they sort of try to wean the children off of nap time, and I'm just sort of like, I don't know. We do probably, actually, it is socially and developmentally appropriate for these children to have unstructured time, be it nap time or whatever. Like, there needs to be time for them to self-direct, drive an activity, go play chess, research a thing, draw, do something that they want to do. I'm not like...
And not be policed.
And I'm not going to be like too woo-woo about it. Like, I'll get pretty woo-woo about it, but like the idea that you have time to do something that you want to do, you can actually
that's
connect.
Anti-capitalist, Jeff.
I know.
You would never...
But you'd have to connect. There actually is a way to connect whatever anybody is doing to some freaking standard if you really want to be that sort of tight-assed about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's definitely... Like, when I taught school years ago, one of the things that I did was I taught chess. And the chess website that I would use... they actually had, like, hey, we have lesson standards that you can use when using chess, which, that is something that you can connect to, like, whatever it is. You don't need, and I mean, I have a lot of critiques of the state curriculum that they have. I mean, there's no reason in hell that you need to have an entire English unit on Steve Jobs' central theme. It's insane.
Oh, I was not aware. Wow.
Oh, buddy, check the website. Check the Louisiana Believes website. There's an entire unit just centering around Steve Jobs as a figure.
That's wild.
As
like, how he didn't treat his cancer.
It doesn't get into that part. It talks about how it's more of a reification of Steve Jobs
I would
as a
assume,
leader.
I would assume that they wouldn't touch upon his no, but I was personally harmed by the teaching to the test. My background is that I was a gifted kid when I was growing up, but because I could knock it out of the park with standardized testing, my learning disability never got noticed.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up dropping out of high school. And
Oh my gosh.
I am a hairstylist because I have dyscalculia and ADHD, and I was like, well, I don't need to do math to be a hairstylist.
Yeah.
I knew that I was bad at math, and people like my teachers were like, well, you're a girl, so girls are just not good at math, so that makes sense that you're bad at math.
That's so ridiculous.
It was the 90s and 2000s. But I was failed by the school system because I could ace standardized tests, but like I don't have to do a standardized test anymore.
Yeah.
It didn't start, if life was standardized tests, I would be doing amazingly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's really, I mean, I feel you on the learning disabilities not being picked up on. I'm obviously not a woman, but like, I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was like 35. It's like one of those sorts of things where, I was sort of like similar to you, able to sort of get by because I can, check the right boxes and, do the 5 sentence paragraphs to respond to the entire prompt or whatever it is. You can very easily game that system.
Yeah, and I can hyper focus, and they're like, well, she focuses really well on those things. I'm like, yeah, she focuses on comic books. Like,
totally. Yeah. And not eating for an entire day until you're really hungry.
Oh, yeah.
ADHD, baby. Let's go.
And you know what's funny is like, I had an interview at NOCA, and like all the kids were talking about the ADHD, and we have adults who are like, they can't all be autistic, they can't all have ADHD. I'm like, we're kind of finding out that
it's pretty common actually. Yeah.
And like if we had just had workarounds, like a lot of people with these things, like you can make your life work. You just need a little workaround.
Yeah. My one of the it's not a perfect like series, but have you ever read the Rick Riordan Percy Jackson series?
Oh, I haven't. They were like a little bit after my time, and it was like boy-coded.
I taught it.
Okay.
It's definitely pretty boy-coded. But like one of the cool things, at least theoretically, or like it's a fantasy or whatever. But like
it's
all
based
the
on Greco-Roman mythology.
Greco-Roman mythology. But the whole point of it was that like the kids that had ADHD were actually like demigods of like Greek descent or like Greek and Roman descent. I don't know.
That tracks. No,
they had like extra powers. It made them special. You know, I thought that was kind of cool.
I have dimples of Venus. I might be a descendant of Venus.
There you go. There you go. But we taught that's one of the school. That's actually one of the better books. That's on the I think third grade.
Yeah, and one thing is that I've heard like
curriculum.
Children are not reading entire texts. They're reading like excerpts of text. They're not reading entire books, and that's like, apparently we have a stamina for reading, and they're not building up that stamina.
There's a so the way that the system, the sort of like curriculum works is there's usually like one anchor text that is discussed over like an entire 9-week period, and they have a lot of excerpts that are sort of like thematically relevant towards it, and that's sort of like how it's laid out. I mean, I think that it's a little bit silly to have a book that take an entire 9 weeks to get through an entire book and examine it to that level. Like I'm more of a read more books kind of guy, and I'm also like against the idea that every single text that you're reading you should be examining to that level. Like there's no like reading for fun, like after lunch.
Exactly.
Like your teacher can read you some freaking Wayside School stuff or whatever, something that's goofy and funny and makes you laugh and whatever.
And I'll be honest, I don't really read for pleasure. I read only nonfiction, and it's like so I can take. It's like this is the most.
Yeah.
Like, this is the most expedited way that I'll get this information in.
Yeah.
And that's not, like, I don't want that for future generations. I want them to, like, enjoy reading a novel and sit by a stream,
Yeah,
and
under
relax.
a tree.
Yeah.
But it's just, like, and again, it's this, and I can definitely get into my, like, philosophy of the whole thing. But like the rise of these sort of like bachelors of sciences in college and this idea of business school. Oh my God, I cannot stand business schools just because of the idea of like this sort of connection between education and like that being your training for a job, and that's the purpose of it, is something that I just can never ever accept.
I call it weaponized MBAs.
Yeah. That's hilarious. But you understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
like it's just like this
everything
conception.
Is a business. Everything is a
and it flows into this, structural. I'm on my high horse now, but it flows on into this structural thing too, where when you make college necessary for existing in the world, and you also have banks that are benefiting off of, profiting billions of dollars off of student debt, then you kind of created this, this neo sort of feudal system or neo patronage system where, in order to play the game of living in the world, you need to have a college degree. And then in order to have that college degree, you need to be deeply in hoc to freaking, the student loan banks.
Yeah, no, I as you know, I'm a hairstylist, so I have felt that, like, when I walk into rooms of power, I've heard the classist things said about me, and as I hope I come up as somebody who's very intelligent.
I think you are.
I'm technically twice exceptional, which is very
gifted.
Participation trophy coded to me. So I don't love the term, but like I'm kind of a genius, but a stupid genius.
Yeah.
But people.
I love those contradictory.
Yeah, like I'm a genius who's just absolutely bad at math, but I can work around it. I can figure it out. But the way that people see me because of what my LinkedIn profile, like non-existent LinkedIn profile would be, they're like, you are nothing. You will never be anything. The content of my character doesn't seem to matter to a lot of people. And I think that a lot of working people see that, and they're like, see something in me that they see in themselves. They see the establishment has been essentially pissing on their face and telling them that it's raining. Yeah. And I think people are tired of it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's just like, I don't know. What you're describing, what you're discussing right here is, it's not the problem, but it is a huge problem. This sort of like valuation is worth. Your worth is your ability to go to college, your ability to have a like prestigious job or whatever. It's like, I don't know, hairstylist is pretty honest work and it ain't easy.
And as we go back to the pandemic and everything, that's what kind of when I realized like, oh, I am actually really important.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
I mean a lot, and like, you know, my husband thinks about the lady who cut his hair when he was like a little boy, and he still thinks about her. Like, you're part of somebody's life.
Yeah.
As a teacher, you're that too. You have a special responsibility. You have people who
hairdressers are kind of therapists too,
well,
aren't
I'm
they?
a therapist. Hey, no, I actually have I have clients who are therapists, and they're like, yeah, you deal with similar things, but I deal with more sometimes. Like this one time, this lady would come to see me because she was having an affair and she didn't have anybody to tell.
Oh no!
And she would just get blowouts so she could talk about her affair, and I was like, I feel highly uncomfortable doing this.
You're doing so. Oh, big yikes there.
Some people will they're like, you're cheaper, I'll take this.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But you know, it's an important role, and like you know, if society
all
collapsed,
work has value.
If society collapsed, the person with the weaponized MBA would be like, hey, can I get a haircut?
Yeah, exactly. Like the school, the society will always need workers, and so that, and again, to get super Marxist about it, like that is where value comes from, and that is where working people's power lies. So, and it's not even these fancy pants like the jerks in Baton Rouge. They're actually doing the least and the least essential work. The
thing that is the most upsetting to me is that we have put the system on the caring professions, like teachers, nurses, you know, like these jobs that they are supposed to be taking care of our people, and we're saying ignore what's going on. You like, you are an empathetic person. You chose this job because you're an empathetic person. I want you to turn a blind eye to that child crying over there.
Have I got some opinions on that? Because, and this is one of the sort of things where, you know, care work is traditionally coded as like pink collar women's work.
Like, and when I was out of the nurses union strike, that's what my sign, I said, pink collar, rise up.
Yeah, no, totally. Like this conception, this idea, and it's to some extent true because of the way that we've organized society, where women are, you know, it's less those since, I guess, you know, different various
and I just want to say, like, it's interesting because we're in the first like 100 years where we're working things out. Like, this is still an uneasy period because, you know, like when I was growing up in the 90s, I got the messaging like girls can do anything. We got that, but we never got
very girl bossy.
Yeah, it was very girl boss. And I feel like it led some women down a dark path. Be like, oh, I'll be a CEO girl boss. As I can exploit people too in my power suit. But
Sheryl Sandbergism was like born.
Lean in, let's lean in. But also, boys of my era and my cohort were not allowed to access their feelings. Like I was allowed to access like rage, but boys were not allowed to access tears, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we're dealing with right now, is that what is the role
I still have problems with that.
Yeah. No, like what in the 21st century, like what is the role of gender? Like we're still figuring that out. And you know, like these pink collar jobs, like more men are coming into them. So like even I had my sign, but I'm like, okay, this is not about you. Like, I'm not trying to gender your work, but like traditionally, this has been women's work. You know, being a hairstylist, you know, working with children, anything like that. It's been women's work, and we're saying, like, what does that mean in the 21st century? Yeah,
what does that mean in the 21st century? And obviously, like, part of the reason that education has been, in my opinion, outside of, like, I'm speaking purely from my experience and extrapolating a bit here. Like, part of, I worked in Jefferson Parish. I would work with a lot of, like, normal people, like younger people, but a lot of the older teachers were sort of more on the sort of like, they had the housewifey mindset, right? They didn't necessarily think, they figured that we just sort of had to accept all of the stuff that they would throw at us during this sort of like any kind of given period. And it was very difficult for me, who's got a big mouth and got, you know, huge opinions and wants to say, like, we're getting screwed over here. They're really taking advantage of us. They weren't listening to me, and that's, you know, that's sort of something that I had to like learn. Like, how do you connect with people? How do you like communicate with those kinds of folks? Because they're still around and they still work hard, and they, you know, they probably vote for Trump a lot of times, but they're, you know, they're still workers, and we need to live our lives and exist with them.
I have a tip that I'm pretty good at connecting with people.
Yeah.
And what I do is called witnessing. And it's that you let somebody speak in their own words. Like, don't tell me about anything that's happened to somebody else. Like, what's happened in your life, and I will not judge you. I will just listen to you, and I will witness your experience. And a lot of people, it really helps.
And don't judge them, obviously. Yeah.
And then usually, people will say things, and sometimes it will come from a place of pain. And then I'll be like, okay, I can connect with that. It's usually that. Like, my in-laws are Trump supporters, and we try to do the thing. Like they would be like, just sit down, just have an open conversation. And they said some things like
you weren't even expecting.
I was like, you really said that. You believe these things. But the key is just to have that universal positive regard. Like, there is somebody in there who has love, who has love and empathy, and we all fundamentally want the same things as human beings, I believe. And it's just finding that connection and not shaming. I think
keeping your composure is also not always easy.
No, and sometimes you can't do that, because I've had people straight up say things to me that I've had traumatic experiences, and they're like invalidating that, and like I won't keep my composure for that. Like,
well, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But within reason, I suppose is what I mean. Sure. Well, as we sort of wind down, wow, this conversation flew by. We have about 5 minutes left. What are the important things to think of in your in the upcoming run up to your election, and where can people find more information about what you're doing?
My website is Biro, BIRO, 4, OPSB.com. And then my Instagram is Biro for OPSB.com. OPSB at Bureau for OPSB. And those are the easiest ways to find out about what I'm doing. But the runoff date is going to be December 7th, so I have less than a month right now. This week, I'm really trying to fundraise because I blew out all my coffers to just get through the election, and so I need a little bit more money for this special election. And I am looking for volunteers for Saturdays. If anybody's local in New Orleans, we're going to be canvassing. And those are...
Where can people sign up?
On my website at Biro, BIRO, 4, OPSB.com.
Cool. Sign up on the website if you are interested in volunteering. Thank you so much, Gabriela Biro, for joining me on the program.
Thank you for having me again.
Right here in the lovely WHIV studios. I haven't been here in a while. This is the first time. This is probably the first time I've recorded an episode here in about 2 years.
Nice.
It's really great to be back in here. You are listening to Good Morning Comrade. This is 102.3 WHIV LP New Orleans. You can get more information about Good Morning Comrade at goodmorningcomrade.com. Follow me on Twitter at EminentProf. Follow the show on Twitter at Comrade Morning. And everything, all the information, where to support the show, goodmorningcomrade.com. Thank you so much for everybody for listening. We love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You are listening to 102.3 WHIV LP New Orleans.